All right, ready to dive into something really fascinating.
Always up for a good deep dive.
Okay, so today we're tackling the British monarchy.
Mm.
But like, not just the fairy tale stuff.
Right, the crowns and the castles are just the surface.
Exactly. We're going deeper using these excerpts from Wikipedia's article on the monarchy of the United Kingdom. It's a surprisingly dense read, full of details you'd never expect.
Oh, absolutely.
So, our mission today, think of this like your cheat sheet for, I don't know, Royal Trivia Night or something. We're going to uncover how this whole monarchy thing actually works, how it evolves over centuries, and what it even means in today's world.
Because it's not just a relic of the past, is it?
Not at all. It's this constantly evolving institution, and we're going to see how it's navigated changing social and political landscapes.
It's a story that often gets simplified, just kings and queens, battles and coronations.
All right, but there's so much more to it than that.
What's often overlooked is the constant evolution of the British monarchy, how it's adapted and survived for centuries.
So, to really get this, we need to go way back to the beginning. Where should we start?
Well, you can't talk about the British monarchy without talking about the Norman Conquest, 1066.
Okay, yeah, William the Conqueror and all that. But wasn't that just, like, a change in leadership? How did that shape the monarchy itself?
It wasn't just a change in leadership, it fundamentally altered England's power structure.
Ah, I see.
William the Conqueror, after his victory at Hastings, he introduced this whole new social and political order.
Right, feudalism, knights, all that.
Exactly. It's a system where loyalty and land ownership were linked.
And that had a lasting impact.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh.
It influenced English law, shaped the relationship between the monarch and the nobility. The ripple effects were felt for centuries.
Okay, wow, so that one event set the stage for so much that followed. Speaking of events that shifted power, what about the Magna Carta?
The Magna Carta,
Oh.
signed in 1215, a truly pivotal moment.
I mean, it's considered a cornerstone of democracy, isn't it?
It is. It established the principle that everyone, even the king, is subject to the law.
No one is above the law. Powerful stuff.
Right. It challenged that idea of absolute monarchy.
And paved the way for a more constitutional system, right?
Exactly. And you know what's amazing?
What?
Even today, the Magna Carta's principles of due process, the right to a fair trial, they resonate in legal systems all over the world.
Wow, over 800 years later, that agreement still has such a profound impact. So we've got the Norman conquest reshaping power, then the Magna Carta setting limits on that power. What comes next in this evolution?
Well, we have to fast forward a few centuries to the Acts of Union in 1707.
Oh, right. The uniting of England and Scotland to form Great Britain.
Exactly. This was a game changer.
It wasn't just about geography, was it?
Not at all. It created a single parliament and laid the groundwork for the modern monarchy with a shared sovereign for this new unified nation.
So the monarchy we're talking about today, it's a result of this, intricate weaving of history, power shifts, and ultimately that union. It's definitely more complex than just kings and queens. But before we move on, we got to talk about Edward VIII, the abdication, the love story, all that.
Ah, yes, Edward VIII.
I mean, it's a reminder that even monarchs are human, right? They make choices, they fall in love.
Absolutely. His decision to abdicate in 1936 sent shockwaves around the world.
I can imagine.
He wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, an American socialite who was divorced, and that clashed with the expectations of the Church of England.
And the monarch is the head of the church, right? So it was this huge constitutional crisis.
It was. Edward ultimately chose love over duty, and it forever altered the course of British history.
It's a what-if scenario that historians still debate, isn't it? Like, if Edward hadn't abdicated, the whole line of succession would be different.
Exactly. It's fascinating to consider. But moving on from this dramatic episode, it's crucial to remember that the British monarchy isn't just for Britain anymore.
You're talking about the Commonwealth, right? I know it's this group of nations with historical ties to Britain, but what's the monarchy's role in all that?
The British monarch is also the head of state for 15 other Commonwealth realms, countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand.
Oh, wow. So the Queen is their queen, too.
Exactly.
So this shared monarchy, it's like a legacy of the British Empire, right?
Yeah.
But how does it work in practice? Are these countries just, mini Britons?
Not at all. Each realm has its own unique relationship with the crown. It's a complex web of historical, political, and cultural connections. But the monarch serves as a symbol of unity and shared heritage.
So the reach of the monarchy extends far beyond the UK. And it's not just symbolic, it's actively functioning in all these different contexts. That's something I never really grasped before.
It speaks to the adaptability of the monarchy, its ability to transform and find relevance in a globalized world.
Okay, so we've seen how the monarchy evolved over centuries, how it spread its reach. But how does this modern version actually work?
To understand that, we need to understand the rules of the game, the system that determines who wears the crown and how power is passed down.
Right, the whole succession thing.
Exactly. And it's more complex than you might think.
Okay, spill the tea. How does the succession thing actually work? Is it as simple as eldest child wins?
Well, not quite. It's all laid out in the Act of Settlement of 1701. It established this clear order of succession based on lineage and birth order.
So no Game of Thrones style power grabs.
Not at all.
Everything's predetermined.
For the most part, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. But didn't that Act of Settlement also have some, shall we say, outdated rules?
Yeah,
Like favoring Protestants over Catholics in the line of succession?
it did, a reflection of the religious and political tensions of that era.
It makes you realize how deeply intertwined these rules are with history.
Absolutely. While some aspects have been modernized, it's a reminder that the system has deep roots.
And speaking of modernization, weren't there some changes to those succession rules fairly recently?
You're right. In 2013, the Succession to the Crown Act was passed.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Didn't it change things so gender is no longer a factor?
That's exactly it. So for anyone born after October 28, 2011, it's simply about birth order, regardless of whether you're a prince or a princess.
Now that's what I call progress. It's fascinating to see how this institution can adapt, even with its long history. But what happens if the monarch can't rule for some reason?
Can't rule.
Yeah, like what if they're too young or they become ill or something like that?
That's where the concepts of regency and counselors of state come in.
Okay, those sound pretty important. Break it down for me. What's a regency?
A regency is established when the monarch is unable to carry out their duties.
Unable to carry out their duties.
Right, due to age, illness, any number of things.
Ah, I see.
And in those cases, a designated individual, usually the next in line to the throne, steps in as regent.
So basically a temporary monarch until the actual monarch can return to their duties.
Exactly. It ensures continuity and stability.
Like a built-in backup system.
You could say that.
Okay, and what about these counselors of state? What do they do?
They're a group of individuals authorized to act on behalf of the monarch in specific circumstances.
So like sharing the workload when the monarch is unavailable.
Precisely. Especially if the monarch is traveling or temporarily incapacitated, it's a way of making sure things run smoothly.
It sounds like they've got this whole system figured out with contingencies for just about everything.
They've had centuries to refine it.
That's true. But this all raises a bigger question. What exactly are the powers of the crown in this modern context? Is it just a symbolic role, all pomp and ceremony, or is there real authority there?
That's the question that gets to the heart of the modern monarchy.
Right. Because we see the queen at events, we hear about royal duties, but what does it actually mean in terms of power?
Well, while the queen doesn't directly govern in the same way as, say, the prime minister, her role is far from symbolic.
There's more to it than meets the eye.
Much more. There's this fascinating set of powers known as the royal prerogative.
Okay, royal prerogative. It sounds almost, I don't know, magical.
It does have a certain mystique to it.
So what are we talking about here? What kind of powers fall under this royal prerogative?
It encompasses a wide range of powers, from appointing the prime minister to dissolving parliament.
Whoa, wait, dissolving parliament, like ending it entirely.
Exactly. Of course, these powers are exercised on the advice of the government, but the monarch still retains a significant degree of influence.
So it's not just a rubber stamp.
Not at all. Take the appointment of the prime minister, for example. Most of the time, it's straightforward. The leader of the party with a majority in parliament gets the job.
Seems simple enough.
But in cases of what are called hung parliaments, where no single party has a clear majority, the monarch's judgment becomes really important.
Ah, so they have to decide who's most likely to form a stable government.
Exactly. And this isn't just theoretical. It happened in 2010, for example, where the Queen's role in the formation of a coalition government was absolutely pivotal.
So the monarch can be a tiebreaker, a deciding factor in who leads the country.
In a sense, yes. It shows that even in a modern democracy, the monarch's power is more than just symbolic.
And it's not all about these formal powers either.
Right.
You mentioned soft power earlier.
You're right. Soft power is another key dimension of the monarchy. It's the power of influence, derived from respect, tradition, the monarch's role as a figurehead for the nation.
Okay, so not just about laws and decrees, but about shaping perceptions, influencing opinions.
Exactly. Think of it as the power of persuasion rather than command.
So things like bestowing honors, serving as the head of the armed forces, having this cultural presence both within the UK and on the world stage.
All of that. It's subtle, but it's a significant form of authority.
Like the Queen meeting world leaders, attending those big events. It all projects a certain image of Britain.
Precisely. It's a form of diplomacy, a way of promoting British interests and building relationships.
But we can't talk about the monarchy without talking about the lifestyle, right? The palaces, the estates, all that.
Yes, the royal lifestyle.
It's definitely part of the mystique. Everyone's dreamt of living like royalty at some point.
I think we all have. And those palaces, they're not just residences, they're symbols.
Like Buckingham Palace, with its hundreds of rooms. It's not just a house, it's the image of the monarchy itself.
And it's a working palace, too. The administrative hub of the monarchy. State banquets, official duties, it all happens there.
And then there's Windsor Castle, the biggest occupied castle in the world, isn't it?
It is.
Weekends at the castle, anyone. But all this opulence, all this grandeur, it makes you wonder, how is it all funded?
That's a question that often sparks debate. The monarch's finances are a mix of public funds and income from those historical estates.
So where does the money come from?
Well, there's something called the sovereign grant. It covers official duties, staff costs, the upkeep of royal palaces.
And the sovereign grant, that comes from?
It's a portion of the revenue generated by the Crown Estate.
The Crown Estate. Remind me what that is again.
It's a vast portfolio of properties and land, worth billions, but it's held in trust for the nation.
So the monarch doesn't personally own it, but benefits from the revenue it generates.
Exactly. And the sovereign grant is calculated as a percentage of those revenues. It's meant to ensure a degree of transparency and accountability.
Okay, so it's a system that tries to balance the historical privileges of the monarchy with a more modern approach to finances. But even with all the palaces and the finances, it's important to remember that being a monarch isn't just about that stuff.
It's a life of duty, tradition, representing an entire nation on the world stage.
Right. Every action is scrutinized, everything they say is analyzed. It's a unique role with a lot of pressure.
It is. And as times change, so too must the monarchy. Which brings us to a crucial question. What does the future hold for this ancient institution?
Especially in a world that's increasingly questioning the role of inherited power and privilege.
That's what we'll delve into next time, when we explore the challenges and opportunities facing the British monarchy in the 21st century. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of the British monarchy.
We've really journeyed through, what, like 1,000 years of history at this point?
At least. We started with the Norman conquest, how it completely reshaped England.
Right. William the Conqueror setting the stage for everything that followed.
Then that pivotal moment with the Magna Carta, putting limits on the monarch's power, even way back then.
It's incredible how those events from so long ago still have this ripple effect today.
And of course, we can't forget the Acts of Union, bringing England and Scotland together to create the Great Britain we know now.
And just think, if Edward VIII hadn't made that dramatic choice to abdicate, the whole line of succession would be completely different.
History is full of those what-if moments.
It really is. But before we get too lost in speculation, we were talking about the powers of the crown, and I'm still fascinated by this royal prerogative you mentioned.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. But it sounds so powerful, almost like something out of a King Arthur legend or something.
It does have a certain mystique to it, but these powers are very real. They're woven into the fabric of the British political system, even today.
And you said they cover a surprisingly wide range of actions.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. The monarch still has the authority to appoint the prime minister.
That's pretty significant. But I imagine most of the time, it's a pretty straightforward process.
You'd think so, right? The leader of the party with a majority in parliament gets the job. Simple as that.
So where's the drama? When does it get complicated?
Well, think about those elections where things are a bit more messy, what we call hung parliaments, where no single party wins a clear majority.
Those nail-biters where everyone's scrabbling to form coalitions.
Exactly. And in those situations, the monarch's role suddenly becomes much more important.
So they have to step in and, make a judgment call?
Precisely. They need to assess the situation, consider the different parties and potential coalitions, and ultimately choose the leader who's most likely to form a stable government.
That sounds like a lot of pressure.
It is, and it's not just a theoretical possibility either.
Right. I remember that happening back in 2010. No one secured a majority, and the Queen had to really weigh her
That
options.
exactly. It shows that the monarch isn't just a figurehead. They can have a real impact on the political landscape.
And it's not just about choosing prime ministers, is it? You also mentioned that the monarch can dissolve parliament.
That's right.
Isn't that a pretty drastic power, like hitting the reset button on the whole government?
It is a significant power. It essentially marks the end of a parliamentary term, paving the way for a general election. But like all the powers of the crown, it's not used lightly.
So there are rules and procedures in place.
Absolutely. We're talking about a constitutional monarchy here, so the monarch's powers are balanced by the principles of democratic governance.
It's a system of checks and balances, like you were saying earlier.
Exactly. But these more formal powers are just one side of the coin.
Right. We can't forget about that soft power we talked about.
Ah, yes, the power of influence, of persuasion. It's more subtle, but often just as effective.
Because it's not about forcing people to do things. It's about shaping perceptions, building relationships, using those less tangible forms of authority.
Precisely. Think about it. The monarch can bestow honors. They serve as the head of the armed forces. They have this cultural presence that extends far beyond the UK.
It's like they embody a certain image of Britain, projecting that out to the world.
It's a form of cultural diplomacy, a way of building bridges and fostering goodwill.
And that can be incredibly powerful, especially in today's world where global challenges require international cooperation.
Absolutely. Soft power is about finding common ground, emphasizing shared values, and in that sense, the monarchy is uniquely positioned to play a role.
But this all brings us back to that big question we keep circling around. What does the future hold for the monarchy?
That's the question, isn't it?
Because we've seen how much it's changed over time, how it's adapted to new realities.
And yet, it still faces these fundamental challenges.
Like the growing concern about inherited privilege, the cost of maintaining this lavish lifestyle, the whole debate about whether a monarchy is even relevant in a modern democracy.
Those are all valid points, and they're not going away anytime soon.
So where do we go from here? Can the monarchy find a way to navigate these turbulent waters?
Well, that's exactly what we'll be exploring in our final segment. We'll delve into the challenges and opportunities facing the British monarchy in the 21st century and consider what its future might hold.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have, from William the Conqueror to the Magna Carta, those royal prerogatives that still matter today.
And how this whole monarchy thing isn't just a British thing anymore. It's a Commonwealth thing.
But now we're at the heart of it all, the future.
Right. The future of the monarchy. It feels like a pretty big question these days, doesn't it?
It does, because the monarchy, it's at a crossroads. On one hand, there's this enduring appeal, the history, the continuity.
It's almost like a living fairy tale in a way.
People are drawn to that, especially in a world that often feels uncertain and chaotic.
Right, it's that sense of stability, like an anchor to the past.
Exactly. And for many, the monarchy represents national identity, a source of pride.
But let's be real, not everyone sees it that way.
Of course not. There are valid criticisms, too.
Like some people see the monarchy as, well, outdated.
They do. They question whether this idea of inherited privilege is compatible with modern democratic values.
Especially in a world that's increasingly focused on equality and social justice.
Right. And there's also the issue of cost. Maintaining the royal lifestyle, all the palaces and staff, it's not cheap.
And when people are struggling financially, it's easy to see why they might question where their tax money is going.
It's a fair point. So the question becomes, can the monarchy adapt without losing its essence?
Like, can it modernize without becoming just another, I don't know, political institution?
It's a delicate balancing act. We've already seen some attempts at modernization, haven't we?
Like with the succession laws. And there's been more transparency around the royal finances.
And of course, social media has played a role in making the royals seem more relatable.
Right. Showing them as like real people, not just these distant figures.
But those are really just, surface level changes. The deeper challenge is addressing those fundamental criticisms about wealth and privilege.
It's about redefining what the monarchy means in the 21st century.
Exactly. Some argue that the monarchy needs to focus more on public service, less on the pomp and circumstance.
Like using their platform to advocate for important causes, climate change, mental health, those sorts of things.
Exactly. Issues that resonate with younger generations, showing that they're engaged with the world, not just living in a bubble.
It's a tough line to walk, though. Honoring tradition while also moving forward.
There's no easy answer. But the future of the monarchy really depends on their ability to find that balance.
It's a story that's still unfolding. Who knows what'll happen next?
One thing's for sure, it'll be fascinating to watch. We've covered a lot today. The history, the powers, the challenges, but ultimately, the future of the British monarchy is in the hands of the royals themselves and the people they represent.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive. It's been quite a journey.
We've explored so much, but this is really just the beginning of the conversation.
Hopefully we've given you some food for thought.
Some historical context, some insights into how the monarchy works, and a sense of the debates surrounding its future.
Now it's your turn. Think critically, engage in those discussions, and see where you stand on this institution.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world around you.
Bye for now.